The sound of the engine was the first thing Daniel Cross heard when he woke up, low, steady, endless. The world outside was a blur of gray mist in motion. He blinked hard, trying to remember where he was. The smell of diesel filled his lungs. His forehead pressed against the cold glass of the bus window. Rows of empty seats stretched out before him. No driver. No passengers. Just the hum of the engine and the faint flicker of the bus's overhead light. He sat up slowly. His watch read 3:17 a.m. "Hello?" His voice echoed down the aisle. Nothing. The bus rumbled on through a fog so thick it looked alive. Shapes formed and disappeared in the mist, trees, road signs, maybe shadows. But every time Daniel tried to focus, they blurred. He stood, clutching the seat in front of him. "Hey, is anyone driving this thing?" Still no answer. He took a few cautious steps forward, the floor creaking beneath his boots. The driver's seat was empty. The wheel turned itself smooth, deliberate, as if guided by invisible hands. Daniel froze. His pulse quickened. Outside, the road ahead was swallowed whole by the fog. He pressed a trembling hand against the driver's seat. It was warm. The moment he touched it, the bus shuddered. The engine coughed, sputtered, then stopped. Silence. The lights flickered once and twice and went out. For a moment, Daniel sat in the dark, breathing fast, the echo of his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. Then slowly the fog outside began to glow. Headlights. A sign appeared through the mist, just beyond the windshield. "Welcome to Greybrooke. Population 147. The bus door hissed open on its own. A gust of cold air swept in, carrying with it the faintest whisper. "You're home, Daniel." He stumbled back, eyes wide. Who said that? The whisper came again, softer this time, almost inside his head. "You should have stayed asleep." Daniel turned toward the aisle, but the bus was empty. The fog had already started creeping in through the open door, swirling around his feet like smoke. He had no idea where he was. No idea how he got there. But something deep inside him whispered what he refused to believe. He'd been here before. Daniel stepped off the bus into the cold. The air felt heavy, not fresh like morning fog, but thick, still, like breathing through a dream. The road beneath his boots was damp and cracked. A narrow street stretched ahead, lined with crooked lampposts and dark wooden houses that looked decades old. Not a sound. Not a single person. Only the faint creak of the bus door closing behind him. He turned back. The bus was gone. Not down the road. Not hidden in the fog. Gone. His pulse thudded painfully in his ears. He took a step backward, staring into the place where the bus had been. The ground was wet, muddy, but there were no tire tracks. The whisper came again, soft as breath. "Welcome home, Daniel." He spun around. Nothing but mist. Then, slowly, a flicker of light appeared through the fog, a small lantern swaying in front of a building. A sign above it read, "Greybrooke General Store." The bell above the door jingled faintly as he pushed it open. Inside, the air smelled of dust and old wood. Shelves lined with canned food, newspapers, and faded labels filled the small shop. Behind the counter stood a woman in her late 50s, smiling as if she'd been expecting him. "Good morning, Daniel." He froze. "How do you know my name?" Her smile didn't falter. "You've always lived here." "What?" He laughed nervously. "No, I was just on a bus. I don't even know where." She tilted her head slightly, the lantern light glinting off her pale eyes. "Oh, Daniel." Her voice softened too gently, too knowing. "You shouldn't pretend you don't remember." He took a step back. "I don't know who you are." She chuckled, a small, breathy sound that echoed strangely through the empty store. "Of course you do." She leaned closer across the counter. "Everyone does." Behind him, the bell above the door jingled again. A man entered, tall, wearing a wool coat, his face hidden by the brim of a hat. When he looked up, Daniel's stomach dropped. He recognized the man's face. Every line, every wrinkle. It was his father. But that couldn't be. His father had died 6 years ago. The man smiled the same warm, proud smile Daniel had seen in his childhood photos. "Morning, son," he said. Daniel stumbled backward, knocking over a shelf of canned goods. No, that's not possible." The man's eyes narrowed slightly. "You look pale. You should go home, rest." He pointed toward the fog-covered street outside. "Your house is still where you left it." Daniel shook his head, backing toward the door. "Stay away from me." The woman's voice followed him as he pushed the door open. "Don't stay out too late, Daniel." Her tone dropped to a whisper. "You remember what happens after dark." The bell rang behind him as he fled into the fog. He ran past more houses, all perfectly aligned, all with their curtains drawn, but from every window he could feel eyes watching. Whispers rose from nowhere, quiet, familiar voices murmuring his name. "Daniel. He's back. He doesn't remember." He stopped running. His breath came out in short, ragged bursts. And then, through the haze, he saw a white mailbox with faded letters barely visible under the grime. Cross. His name. On a mailbox in a town he'd never been to. But when he looked up at the house behind it, the lights were already on. Daniel stood motionless in front of the mailbox. The name Cross glared back at him through a thin film of dust, letters chipped and rusted with age. His heart pounded like the echo of a door closing behind him. He didn't move for a long time. The house loomed above him 2 stories, wooden siding warped from rain and time. Curtains drawn tight. Yet through one window he swore he saw movement. A shadow. A hand. He took a step back, his throat dry. Then another faint sing-song, carried on the wind, broke through the silence. Fresh bread still warm. Daniel turned. Down the street, the fog parted just enough to reveal a small shop with a flickering neon sign. Marion's Bakery. The smell of warm bread drifted out the door. For the first time since he arrived, something felt human. He pushed the door open. A small brass bell jingled above him, the sound too cheerful for a place like Greybrooke. The air inside was thick with the scent of sugar and yeast. Shelves of pastries lined the counter, and behind it stood a woman dusting flour from her hands. She looked up and Daniel's world stopped. It was her. His sister Anna. Same hazel eyes, same dimple on her left cheek, but older, as if years had passed that shouldn't have. She smiled warmly. "Morning, Danny." His legs nearly gave out. "No," he whispered. "You can't, you're dead?" She finished softly, almost amused. "You always say that." He stumbled backward. "Anna died when she was 12. She tilted her head, eyes full of a strange sadness. "You're tired again. It's worse when you don't sleep." Daniel's voice trembled. "Where am I?" "Home," she said. "Greybrooke. You know that." He stared at her, shaking his head. "I don't know this place. I don't know how I got here. I was on a bus." The smile faded from her face. Her tone changed, quieter, lower. "You shouldn't talk about the bus." "Why not?" Her eyes darted to the window, where the fog pressed against the glass like a living thing. "Because it listens." The floor creaked behind him. Daniel turned sharply, but no one was there. When he looked back, Anna or whoever she was had gone still. Her gaze wasn't on him anymore, but fixed on the mirror behind the counter. "Do you see it?" she whispered. Daniel turned. In the mirror's reflection, he saw the shop empty, dimly lit. But standing directly behind him was another figure. Tall, pale, expressionless. He spun around. No one there. His heart slammed against his ribs. He turned back toward the mirror. The reflection had changed. Now the mirror showed only him. Except his reflection was smiling. And he wasn't. Anna's voice cracked into a whisper. "He's waking up again." Daniel stumbled backward, knocking over a tray of bread. "Who is?" She met his eyes, tears forming. "You are." The lights flickered. The smell of burning filled the room. Outside, the fog pressed tighter against the windows, pulsing like it was breathing. Daniel's reflection raised a hand and waved. The bell above the bakery door jingled as Daniel stumbled outside. He ran until his breath tore in his chest, until the smell of burnt bread faded from the air. When he finally stopped, the fog had thickened. It clung to his clothes, his skin, and every time he blinked, he thought he saw faces forming in it. He wiped sweat from his forehead. "This isn't real," he whispered. "None of this is." A sharp sound cut through the air. Crack. Daniel froze. It came from the window of a nearby house. A long, jagged line had appeared across the glass, like something inside was pressing against it. Then slowly the curtain moved. He stepped closer, squinting. The glass reflected his image faintly. But as he moved nearer, something shifted in the reflection. It wasn't him anymore. The man in the window had the same eyes, same features, but older. The skin sagged, the eyes sunken and hollow. The reflection smiled a wide, knowing grin that didn't belong to him. Daniel stumbled backward. No. The reflection lifted a finger and pressed it against the inside of the glass. A whisper seeped through the cracks. "You left us here, Daniel." He bolted down the street. Doors on either side of him began creaking open. Windows rattled. Each one, every pane of glass, every mirror, every polished surface showed him. Hundreds of him. All staring. All whispering the same thing. "Welcome home. Welcome home. Welcome home." He covered his ears, but the voices seeped in like water. Then silence. The whispers stopped. The air went still. Even the fog seemed to hold its breath. Daniel opened his eyes. He stood before a small antique shop he hadn't noticed before. The sign above the door was faded, but he could just make out the words. Elias and Son mirrors, clocks, and reflections. He didn't want to go in. Every instinct screamed. But the silence was worse than the whispers. He pushed the door open. Inside, mirrors of every shape and size covered the walls. Some were cracked, others fogged, and a few shimmered faintly as if they weren't reflecting light, but watching him. The air smelled of metal and dust. Ticking clocks echoed from somewhere deeper in the shop. "Hello." His voice quivered. From the shadows, a figure emerged. An old man in a black vest emerged, his eyes clouded with cataracts. "You came back," the man rasped. Daniel's pulse spiked. "What is this place?" The man smiled faintly. "The place between what you remember and what remembers you." He stepped closer, pointing at one of the larger mirrors. "That one still knows your face." Daniel turned. The mirror was old, its silver backing faded. His reflection looked back pale, exhausted. Then, behind him in the reflection, something moved. A tall, dark silhouette standing just inches from his shoulder. He spun around. No one there. When he looked back at the mirror, his reflection was gone. The glass was black. "Where did it go?" he stammered. The old man's voice dropped to a whisper. "It's not your reflection anymore." Daniel's throat tightened. "What does that mean?" The old man's cloudy eyes shifted toward him. "It means you've been here before, Daniel. And last time." He smiled. "You never left." The mirror cracked. Thin, branching lines spread across the glass, and from behind it, something started to breathe. The crack deepened. A faint pulse of light flickered behind the mirror, like something alive was trapped inside. Daniel stumbled backward. "What is that?" The old man Elias didn't move. His voice was calm, almost reverent. "Not what, Daniel?" "Who?" The glass shivered, and for a moment, Daniel saw movement within the fractures. Faces pressing against the inside of the mirror, mouths opening and closing soundlessly, eyes wide with terror. "Jesus," Daniel whispered. "There are people in there." Elias smiled faintly. "They were." Daniel's stomach turned. "What are you talking about?" Elias stepped closer, running a wrinkled finger down the cracked surface. "Greybrooke remembers everyone who dies here. Every sin. Every lie. But reflections." He paused, tapping the glass lightly. "Reflections remember you. The faces inside the mirror began to move faster now, distorting like ripples in water. Some looked like strangers, but others... Daniel froze. He recognized one. A young boy with freckles, missing one front tooth. Himself. "No," Daniel muttered, shaking his head. "That's not possible." The old man chuckled softly. "You've seen the others already. Your sister. Your father. You know what they are." Daniel's voice cracked. "They're dead." "No." Elias leaned in closer, his cloudy eyes glinting. "They're reflected." The mirror's surface began to ripple like liquid. The child's face, the younger Daniel, opened his mouth, and from the glass came a faint, echoing whisper. "You promised you wouldn't leave again." Daniel stepped back, heart hammering. "Leave what? What promise?" Elias turned toward him, the faintest smile curling his lips. "You don't remember the fire, do you?" Daniel blinked, confusion and dread twisting together. "What fire?" "The one that burned the Cross House. Your mother inside. You ran, Daniel. You never looked back." Daniel froze. His throat went dry. "No," he whispered. "That's not true." Elias tilted his head. "You think this town came from nowhere? You built it, Daniel. Out of guilt." The room grew colder. The ticking of the clocks slowed, one by one, until the sound was replaced by the faint, rhythmic breathing from behind the mirror. The old man stepped back. "The collector's awake now." The mirror began to bulge outward, the cracks glowing faintly red. A shadowy hand pressed through the surface, long fingers clawing the air. Daniel turned to run, but the old man caught his wrist with a grip far too strong for his frail frame. "It wants its face back," Elias hissed. "Yours." The mirror exploded. Shards of glass rained down like crystal rain, slicing through the air. Daniel shielded his face, but when he looked up, the old man was gone. Only his reflection remained. Standing tall, smiling, blood running down the corners of its mouth. Daniel took one trembling step backward. His reflection didn't move. Then it blinked. "Welcome back, Daniel." The glass beneath his feet pulsed softly at first, then stronger like a heartbeat. And through the broken shards scattered on the floor, dozens of reflections began whispering the same thing, each in his own voice. "You can't run from yourself. You never left Greybrooke. You're already home." Daniel screamed and bolted through the door into the fog, shards crunching under his boots as the whispers chased him into the night. Behind him, the mirrors began to laugh. Daniel ran until his lungs burned. The fog never cleared, it only thickened, swallowing the road, the houses, everything behind him. His footsteps echoed like they were inside a tunnel instead of a town. He didn't stop until he reached the Cross House. His house. It looked older than memory. The white paint peeled away like rotting skin. The windows were dark, their glass warped. The front door leaned on one rusted hinge, half open as if waiting for him. A cold wind drifted out from the doorway, carrying with it the faint smell of smoke. Burnt wood. Charred cloth. Daniel's heart twisted painfully. He hadn't smelled that scent in years, not since that night. The night he ran. He stepped forward, his hand trembling as it touched the cracked wood of the door. It felt warm. Inside, the house was cloaked in darkness. The air was thick, smoky, alive with quiet creaks and shifting shadows. "Hello?" His voice cracked. No answer, just the soft, distant crackle of fire. He moved down the narrow hallway. His boots left faint prints in the thin layer of ash that covered the floor. Every photo frame along the walls had been blackened by heat, their faces warped beyond recognition. He stopped at the end of the hall. The door to the living room was glowing faintly orange beneath the frame. He pushed it open. The room was exactly as he remembered it. The old wooden table. The worn sofa. The family photos. And at the center of the room, flames. Fire burned across the floor and ceiling, yet nothing was consumed. The fire moved slowly as if time itself were dragging it along. And sitting in the armchair, calm and motionless amid the burning light, was his mother. Daniel froze. His throat locked. "Mom?" She turned her head toward him, eyes hollow but soft. Her voice came out low, distant, echoing as if from another world. "You came back too late, Danny." Tears welled in his eyes. No, this isn't real. I tried to. You ran." Her tone sharpened, though her face remained expressionless. "You left us here to burn." He fell to his knees. "I was a kid. I didn't know what to do." The flames flickered brighter. Her voice grew cold. "You remembered everything except the door you closed behind you." He looked up. The mirror above the fireplace began to ripple. His reflection appeared, but this time, it wasn't alone. Standing behind it were dozens of faces, all with his features, all burned, all watching. Their mouths opened in unison. "You left us." Daniel staggered backward. "Stop it." The mirror cracked. From the splintered surface, a child's voice whispered, "You said you'd come back for me." Daniel turned toward the stairs and froze. At the top stood the boy. "I am 12 years old. Freckles." His own eyes staring back. "You," Daniel whispered. The boy smiled sadly. "You promised, remember?" The house groaned as flames climbed the walls. Ash drifted through the air like snow. Daniel stumbled forward, reaching for the child, but the boy shook his head. "You can't save what is already burned." The stairs cracked under Daniel's foot, and when he looked down, the wood beneath him glowed red-hot. The fire roared to life, swallowing the walls, the floor, the ceiling. And then everything went dark. When Daniel opened his eyes, the house was gone. He stood in the middle of the road again. Behind him, nothing remained but a single flickering lantern lying in the dirt, still burning, but casting no light. From the fog, a voice whispered, "You can't wake up until you remember how you died." The fog rolled thicker, swallowing everything but the faint glow of the lantern. Daniel stood trembling, smoke still clinging to his clothes, his throat raw from shouting. The road stretched endlessly ahead, a pale ribbon cutting through the dark. He walked. He didn't know where he was going, only that every instinct screamed, "Don't stop." But the deeper he went, the quieter the world became. No wind. No footsteps but his own. No heartbeat, even until, suddenly, there was another sound. Shovel. Metal against dirt. Slow. Steady. Deliberate. He froze. Somewhere beyond the fog, something was being buried. Or unearthed. He followed the sound, one cautious step at a time. The fog thinned, revealing rows of crooked headstones. The letters on them were faded, some covered in moss, others cracked through the middle. Greybrooke Cemetery. And there, in the center of it all, stood a man in a black coat, digging. The shovel struck the earth again. And again. The rhythm was too calm for something human. Daniel cleared his throat. "Hey." The man didn't turn. He just kept digging. "Hey." Daniel called again, louder this time. "What are you doing out here?" The shovel stopped. The man slowly lifted his head. His face was pale, streaked with mud, eyes sunken deep into his skull. He smiled faintly. "Finishing what you started." Daniel's stomach dropped. "What?" The man jabbed the shovel into the ground and leaned on it. "Not many come back here. Most stay buried." Daniel took a step closer. The hole the man had dug was shallow, no coffin, no bones, just earth. But at its head stood a new gravestone, freshly carved. Daniel stepped forward to read it. His breath caught in his throat. Daniel Cross. Born, 1989, died, unknown. He stumbled backward. No, this isn't right." "Oh, that's right." The man's voice was almost kind. "It's just that you keep forgetting." Daniel's hands shook. "Forgetting what?" The man reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small and blackened. He tossed it toward Daniel. It hit the dirt with a soft thud. A photo. Daniel bent down, picked it up, and felt his blood run cold. It was a picture of him, lying in the street. Eyes open. My body burned. "The house fire," the man said quietly. "It didn't take your mother first. Daniel's hands trembled as he stared at the photo. "No, I ran, I made it out." The man tilted his head, watching him with something like pity. "Then why do you keep coming back here, Daniel?" Daniel looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" The man stepped closer, his shadow stretching unnaturally across the graves. "You think this is the first time you've walked these roads? The first time you've begged for it to end? You die here every night. And every morning you wake up on that bus again." Daniel's lips parted. "That bus isn't taking you anywhere," the man finished. "It's bringing you back." The shovel fell from the man's hands. The ground beneath Daniel's feet began to sink slowly at first, then faster, pulling him down like quicksand. He screamed, reaching for something to hold onto, but the soil was soft, wet, alive. Hands, dozens of them, shot out of the earth, clawing at him, pulling him under. He looked up at the man, eyes wide with horror. "Help me." The man only watched. "You already buried yourself, Daniel." The ground swallowed him whole. Everything went black. Then, the sound of air brakes, the hum of an engine. Daniel's eyes flew open. He was sitting in a bus seat. The same window. The same fog outside. His watch read 3:17 a.m. And from the driver's seat, a voice called softly, "Good morning, Daniel. Time to go home." The engine hummed. The low, endless vibration filled the empty bus like a heartbeat. Daniel sat frozen in his seat. His palms were slick with sweat, his throat too dry to swallow. The fog outside was as thick as before, swallowing everything but the bus headlights. Only this time he wasn't asleep. He remembered the fire, the grave, the whisper, and the voice from the front of the bus said, "Time to go home." He stood, gripping the seat in front of him for balance. "Who are you?" he shouted. The bus didn't slow, didn't turn, didn't respond. Daniel took a shaky step forward, walking the aisle one seat at a time. His shoes scuffed the floor, leaving faint streaks in the thin layer of dust coating it. The closer he got to the driver's seat, the colder the air became. "Hey!" His voice cracked. "I said, who are you?" The driver didn't move. He sat perfectly still, shoulders straight, both hands on the wheel, head slightly tilted toward the road. Daniel's breath came faster. He reached out, his fingers brushing the back of the driver's seat. "Turn around." No response. "Turn around." The driver's head shifted. Slowly. Mechanically. The motion was too smooth, like the joints weren't bones but hinges. The face that turned toward Daniel wasn't wearing a hat. It wasn't human. It was his. Every detail. Every scar. Every hollow in the cheeks. Only the eyes were wrong. They were black, empty, and endless. Daniel staggered backward. "No. No, that's not." The other Daniel smiled. "Late again." Daniel's pulse thundered. "What are you?" The driver chuckled softly, his voice echoing through the hollow bus. "You already know." Daniel shook his head violently. "No. I'm alive." "Are you?" The driver turned back toward the windshield. "Check again." Daniel's hands trembled as he looked down and froze. His fingers were gray, ashen. The skin cracked like burned paper. He gasped and looked at his reflection in the window. His face was pale, half-burned, charred along the jawline. He stumbled back, shaking his head. "No, this isn't real. This isn't. You said that the first time." The words hit him like a punch. He stared at the driver, his other self, who still gripped the wheel with that same calm smile. "You ran," the driver said. "You left her. You left all of them." "Stop," Daniel shouted. "You came back. You always come back." The driver's voice deepened, distorting, layered with hundreds of others, all speaking as one. Greybrooke doesn't let go of its reflections. Daniel grabbed the driver's shoulder, but his hand passed through it like smoke. He stumbled forward, losing balance, his chest hitting the steering wheel. The horn blared. The headlights flared. Outside, through the fog, a dark shape appeared, the faint outline of a sign. "Welcome to Greybrooke." Population, 147. The bus slowed. The doors hissed open. The other Daniel looked back at him. End of the line. Daniel's breath hitched. No, I'm not getting off. The driver's grin widened, splitting too far, stretching to the edges of his face. You already did. The fog poured into the bus. It wrapped around Daniel's legs, his arms, his face pulling, choking, whispering in dozens of voices all at once. Welcome home. You never left. It's time to remember. Daniel screamed. And then there was silence. Only the bus remained idling on the side of the road. The driver sat alone, smiling. Outside the window, a faint shadow walked down the fog-covered street. And every mirror in Greybrooke turned toward it. Daniel's scream still echoed inside his head. He didn't remember leaving the bus, only the moment his feet touched the wet pavement and the fog swallowed the world again. Now he stood in the middle of Greybrooke. Completely still. Completely alone. Or so he thought. Every house on the street was dark, every window sealed tight. Yet somehow he felt them all, the eyes behind the glass, the breath of something watching from every shadow. He rubbed his arms, shivering though the air wasn't cold. Someone's here, he muttered. His voice was small, as if even the sound was afraid to travel too far. A faint click echoed behind him. He turned. A street lamp flickered to life, buzzing faintly, then another and another, until the whole street was lined with a pale, sickly yellow light. But the lights didn't help. They only revealed how wrong everything looked. Each house's curtain twitched at the exact same time. Each shadow on the wall shifted toward him. And from the distance came a faint, rhythmic sound, like hundreds of whispers blending into one endless murmur. He stepped forward. Who's there? The whispering stopped instantly. Daniel froze. He was pounding in his chest. The sound came from a nearby window. A finger, pale and thin, pressed against the glass from the inside. Daniel moved closer, peering through the fogged pane. A woman stood there, her face hidden behind the reflection of the streetlight. Ma'am? She placed her other hand on the glass. Then another. And another. More hands appeared beside hers, dozens of them pressing against the inside of the window like people packed together in a tiny space. Daniel stumbled backward. The fog thickened, creeping closer, wrapping around the houses until only the faint glow of the lamps remained. Behind every window on the street, the same scene repeated, faces pressed against the glass, eyes wide and lifeless, all watching him. Stop, Daniel whispered. Stop staring at me. But the faces only leaned closer. Their mouths moved, but no sound came out. And then, one by one, every door on the street creaked open at the same time. Creak. The whispering returned. Louder this time. Like the whole town was breathing his name. Daniel. You're late again. Don't you recognize us? Daniel backed away. His heel caught on something, a puddle. He slipped and fell to his knees, splashing muddy water over his hands. He froze. In the reflection of the puddle, he saw hundreds of faces staring up at him. Some were strangers, some were family, and some were him. They whispered together, their voices perfectly in sync. You made us. Daniel scrambled to his feet, trembling. No, I didn't make anything. The whispers swelled. You dreamed of us. You forgot us. You left us. The fog around him shifted, thickening, swirling, forming shapes. Faces began to rise out of it, translucent, hollow-eyed, mouths opening and closing in unison. Daniel turned to run, and stopped dead. Standing in the middle of the street ahead was a woman holding a lantern. The bakery woman. His sister Anna. Her face was calm, her eyes empty. The flame of the lantern burned black. You can't run anymore, Danny, she said softly. They already see you. Behind her, the fog faces moved closer. Hundreds. Thousands. You can't wake up, they whispered. Not until you remember what you did. Daniel shook his head, stepping backward. I didn't do anything. Anna tilted her head. Then why does the town look like you? Before he could speak, the lantern flickered, and the entire street went dark. For one horrifying moment, Daniel saw everything. Every window, every mirror, every puddle. Each one showed his face burning, screaming, melting into shadow. Then the world vanished. When the lights returned, he stood in a different place entirely, the churchyard on the edge of town. And the bell above the chapel tower began to ring. Toll, toll, toll. Each strike echoed through the air, vibrating in his bones. From the mist, the church door creaked open, and a voice, deep, familiar, and broken, whispered from inside. "Confession time, Daniel." The bell tolled again. What? Twice. 3 times. Each ring sounded older than time itself, drawn out, hollow, and soaked in grief. Daniel stood at the gate of the churchyard, staring up at the crooked steeple. The wood was rotten, the bell tower leaning slightly to one side like it was too tired to keep standing. The fog rolled over the graves, curling around the tombstones as if caressing them. Each stone bore a name. Each name was crossed out. He swallowed hard. "Confession time," he whispered, repeating the voice's words. "What the hell does that mean?" The wind didn't answer. It only carried the faint smell of smoke, burning wood, and something far worse beneath it. Daniel pushed the gate open. The rusty hinges screamed in protest. Inside, the church loomed silent. The double doors stood wide as though waiting for him. Candlelight flickered from within, casting dancing shadows across the cracked steps. He took one breath and stepped inside. The air was heavy with dust. Rows of pews sat uneven and broken, the wood blackened from old fire damage. And at the far end of the room stood the altar, covered with a white sheet stained dark red. A man knelt before it, facing away from Daniel. He wore a priest's robe, tattered and burned at the sleeves. The bell tolled again. Toll. Daniel froze. The priest didn't move. Toll. The candles wavered. Shadows stretched longer across the floor. Toll. The sound burrowed deep into Daniel's skull until it became a pulse behind his eyes. He took a step forward. "Father?" The priest spoke without turning. "Do you seek forgiveness, my son?" Daniel hesitated. "I don't even know what I did." "Then it's worse than I thought." The priest stood slowly. The sound of bones creaked under the robe. "Come closer," he said. "Your sins have followed you here." Daniel's heart raced. "What sins?" "I don't remember anything." The priest's voice lowered. "You remember enough." Daniel's mouth went dry. He took another step, drawn toward the altar despite every instinct telling him to run. The sheet fluttered slightly as if something beneath it was breathing. "Who are you?" he whispered. "The one who buried what you did," the priest said, finally turning. Daniel's stomach twisted. The priest's face was wrapped in white cloth, and yet through the thin fabric, faint outlines of familiar features showed. It was his own face. Another reflection. Daniel stumbled backward, shaking his head. "No. No, not again." The priest raised a trembling, burned hand. "You lit the fire, Daniel?" Daniel froze. "What fire?" "The one that killed them all." The candles flared violently, and the air filled with the thick stench of burning flesh. Daniel clutched his head as visions tore through him, flames consuming the church, people screaming, faces melting into smoke. He saw himself standing in the middle of the blaze, holding the lantern. He heard Anna's voice shouting his name before the ceiling collapsed. Then silence. The vision vanished. Daniel gasped, falling to his knees. "No, that's not real. That can't be real." The priest stepped closer. "You burned the town. You burned us. And you burned yourself." Daniel screamed, "Stop it." The priest stopped and slowly reached for the sheet covering the altar. He pulled it away. Beneath it lay a coffin. Blackened, cracked, and engraved with a single name. Daniel Carter. Daniel's eyes widened in horror. "No, that's not." The priest removed his veil. Underneath, there was no skin, only ash and shadow shaped like his own skull. "You don't get to deny what you are." the priest said. "You are Greybrooke's last sin." The bell rang again. The walls of the church began to melt like candle wax. The stained glass windows shattered inward, raining shards of light that turned into fluttering cinders. Daniel screamed, covering his head. The priest's voice thundered through the collapsing church. "Confess or burn again." The coffin lid burst open. Inside lay Daniel's own body, blackened, twisted, eyes still open. He reached out, and everything went white. When Daniel opened his eyes, he was lying in the middle of the street again. The church was gone. The fog was thicker than ever. And from somewhere in the distance, 1,000 voices whispered his name. Daniel Carter. Murderer. Welcome back. Daniel stumbled through the fog, clutching his chest as if his heart were trying to claw its way out. His breaths came shallow, his throat raw. The bell's echoes had stopped, but the whispers hadn't. They followed him, crawling through the mist, rising and falling like the tide. Each one hissed his name. Each one sounded like someone he knew. Daniel. Don't look away. Don't forget. He pressed his palms to his ears. Stop. Just stop. The fog thinned slightly. Ahead, through the gray haze, he saw the outline of a house. Different from the others, smaller, cleaner. Its walls were white, untouched by smoke or age. The front door was open. A faint light flickered inside. Daniel hesitated. Every instinct screamed not to go in. But the pull of that strange, heavy gravity of the town dragged him forward. He stepped onto the porch. The wooden floorboards didn't creak. The house was silent. Too silent. Inside, it smelled faintly of lilies and dust. Daniel's eyes adjusted to the dim light. There were pictures on the walls of dozens of them, but each one was blank. Frames without faces. He reached out to touch one. The surface was warm. Almost breathing. His reflection appeared faintly in the glass, distorted, stretched like a funhouse mirror. Then it blinked. Daniel jerked his hand away. His reflection stayed in place for a moment, then smiled on its own. You found it. Daniel froze. What did you say? The reflection tilted its head. The house without mirrors. The only one that remembers. The whispering outside grew louder, pressing against the windows like wind. Daniel looked around the room. The furniture was old but clean. A table with a single chair. A cracked lamp flickering dimly. And at the far end a staircase leading upward. From above, a faint creak echoed. Someone was up there. Daniel's pulse hammered. Who's there? No reply. Just another creak. And another. Slow, deliberate footsteps. He grabbed a broken chair leg from the floor and took a cautious step toward the stairs. Each step moaned under his weight. Halfway up, he saw a small mirror hanging crookedly on the wall. But the surface wasn't glass. It was liquid. Rippling faintly like water disturbed by breath. Daniel leaned closer. His reflection stared back, eyes wide, terrified. Don't, a voice whispered. He spun around. A woman stood at the top of the stairs. Her skin was pale as chalk. Her eyes were gone smooth, empty hollows where they should have been. But her voice was familiar. Don't touch the mirror, Danny. Anna, he breathed. She nodded slowly. You shouldn't have come here. Daniel's throat tightened. Why are you doing this? What do you all want from me? Her face twitched, a flicker of pain or something close to it. We want you to remember. I did remember, he shouted. The fire, the church. Not that, she said softly. Before that. The mirror rippled again, brighter this time, showing not a reflection but a room. Daniel's childhood bedroom. The sunlight. The laughter. His sister's voice. Then the same room years later, filled with shadows, whispers, and the faint glow of candlelight. Ritual symbols painted on the floor. And Daniel, older now, standing in the center with a lantern in hand. He stumbled back. No, that's not real. Anna's hollow eyes seemed to look at him even without pupils. It was you who called them. Called who? The floor shook violently. The mirror shattered not outward but inward, sucking the light from the room. Every blank frame on the wall filled at once. Each one showed a different version of Daniel. Smiling, screaming, burning. "You made the town," Anna whispered. "And now the town remembers you." The light went out. Darkness swallowed everything. From every corner of the room, hundreds of whispering voices spoke as one. No mirrors left to hide behind. "Look at what you built. Look at yourself." Daniel fell to his knees, covering his face, but he could still see. Everywhere he looked, faces formed in the dark, his faces repeating his every move, his every breath, his every scream. And somewhere far away the bell began to toll again. Toll, toll, toll. The bell tolled faintly in the distance. A deep, hollow sound that seemed to come from underground rather than the church tower. Daniel stayed on his knees for a long moment, breathing hard, his chest heaving. The air around him shimmered faintly. The whispers had gone quiet again, but only for now. They were waiting, watching. He wiped his face and stood. Anna was gone. The stairs behind him looked warped, stretching too far up as if they'd never end. A faint light flickered from the floorboards near the table. Daniel knelt down and brushed away dust, and beneath his hand he found a small iron ring. A trapdoor. He hesitated, his fingers trembling. Then with a grunt he pulled it open. The hinges screamed. A cold wind surged upward, carrying the faint scent of mildew and ash. Below him, the faint glow of candles. He swallowed hard. Then he climbed down. The ladder led into a narrow hallway of stone. The walls were lined with mirrors, hundreds of them, old and cracked, covered in layers of dust. Yet each one reflected something different. Not his face, not the hallway, but memories. He saw himself as a child smiling beside Anna in the sunlight. He saw their parents, their faces kind, then frightened, then burning. He saw himself older, kneeling before an altar drawn on the ground in chalk, holding a book that wasn't his. And in every reflection, he saw the fog creeping in. Daniel reached out to one mirror, brushing his fingertips across the surface. It rippled like water, and he heard faint voices from inside. "Please, Danny, stop. You said it would make them live again." He staggered back, shaking his head. No, that wasn't me. But deep down, something inside him knew. He had been trying to save them. He had been the one who started it all. He'd called something into Greybrooke, and it never left. A new mirror caught his eye. It was larger than the rest, tall enough to fill the wall, framed in black iron. And this one showed him, right now, standing in the hallway. But there was something behind him. Slowly he turned. Nothing. He looked back at the mirror. Now the figure was closer, to a dark silhouette with glowing white eyes. "You shouldn't be here," the reflection whispered. Daniel took a step back. "Who are you? You called me. You made me from every piece of your guilt." The voice grew deeper. "And when the fire came, I didn't burn." The figure stepped forward and stepped out of the mirror. Daniel stumbled backward, tripping over a loose stone and falling to the ground. The thing towered over him, its skin cracked like charred wood, its mouth split into a too-wide grin. It was him, yet older, burned hollow. "You made Greybrooke," the creature hissed. "You filled it with your faces, your fears, your lies. And now you live here with us." Daniel shook his head violently. "I didn't mean to. I was trying to save them." The creature crouched close, the air around it reeking of soot and rot. "You summoned something you couldn't control. You brought them back, but they weren't the same." Daniel's voice cracked. "I can fix it." The creature's grin widened. "No, you can't. You are the mistake." It raised its hand and pressed a finger against Daniel's forehead. The mirrors around them began to shatter one by one, exploding into shards of light. Each shard hovered in the air, showing fragments of Daniel's memories. The fire, the ritual, the townspeople screaming his name. "Every reflection," the creature whispered, "is a piece of you that refused to die." The shards swirled around Daniel like a storm. He screamed, the sound echoing infinitely in the mirrored walls. When he opened his eyes, the creature was gone. So were the mirrors. He was standing in a circular room. The walls were bare. Only a single object stood in the center, a cracked lantern, still faintly glowing. He knelt beside it, his hands trembling. Carved into its metal surface were the words, "To light the way back." Daniel's breath caught. A memory flashed of Anna handing him the lantern before the ritual. "It will guide them home, Danny," she'd said. "Just don't look at the flame." He stared at the lantern. The faint black fire inside flickered, and in its glow, dozens of faces appeared, whispering through the light. "Light it again," they murmured. "Finish what you started." Daniel reached toward it. His reflection in the flame smiled before he did. The lantern's glow pulsed softly in the dark. Its light wasn't warm, it was alive. Every flicker seemed to breathe, every shadow around it twisted and shifted, like something unseen crawled beneath the flame. Daniel crouched before it, trembling. The whispers from the dark pressed closer. "Light it again. Finish what you began. Let us see the fire." He shook his head violently. "No, I won't." His voice echoed in the stone chamber, bouncing back at him. Each echo slightly different. Some sounded terrified. Some are angry. And one whispered in a low voice that wasn't his at all. "You already did." Daniel gritted his teeth. "What happens if I light it?" Silence. Then softly from the far corner a familiar voice. "You'll bring us back, Anna." She stood half in shadow, her hollow eyes faintly glowing. The darkness seemed to cling to her body like smoke. "Anna," Daniel breathed. "You're real." She smiled faintly, sorrowful. "I'm what's left." Daniel took a small step forward. "Tell me how to end this." "You can't end it," she said. "You can only remember it all." She nodded toward the lantern. "That's the door you opened, Danny. And the only way out is through it." Daniel's hands shook as he stared at the black flame. "If I light it again, I'll set the whole town on fire." "The town's already burning," Anna said. "You just stopped looking." The walls of the room began to ripple like a heat haze. He could hear faint screams, the sound of fire roaring through wood, the bell tolling endlessly, the echo of his own voice crying for help. He fell to his knees, clutching his head. "I didn't want this." "You wanted them back," Anna whispered. "You made a bargain you didn't understand." Daniel looked up sharply. "Bargain?" Anna nodded. "You offered your reflection to bring the town back to life. Now your reflection owns it." Her face darkened. "You burned Greybrooke to purify it, but you never stopped the curse. You fed it." The lantern flickered brighter, the black flame rising taller. Inside it, he saw faces, hundreds, all pressed together, mouths moving silently. And then one spoke, his own. "Light it, Daniel. Set me free." Daniel stumbled backward, shaking. "No. No more. I'm ending this." He lifted the lantern, its weight heavier than any metal should be. The whispers screamed louder. The walls began to collapse, mirrors reforming, glowing from inside with ghostly light. "Don't you dare," the voices hissed. "We are you. You are us." Anna reached toward him. "Whatever you do, Danny, do it now." Daniel raised the lantern above his head and brought it crashing to the ground. Crack. The glass shattered. The black flame erupted outward, a wave of shadow fire exploding across the room. The mirrors burst one after another, filling the air with shards of light that burned like embers. The whispers turned to screams. The faces melted. The fog began to bleed light. And in the middle of it all, Daniel stood, his eyes glowing with the reflection of 1,000 lives. He heard Anna's voice faintly, fading with the fire. "Now remember, Danny. Remember everything." The world went white. When he opened his eyes, he was standing in a field. No fog. No fire. No faces. Just morning sunlight and the sound of wind through the grass. In the distance, a single house stood, small, wooden, untouched. Its windows glimmered faintly, but they didn't reflect him. He took one step forward. Behind him, faintly from nowhere and everywhere at once came a whisper. "Welcome back, Daniel." He turned and saw himself standing there, the burned version, smiling gently. "You didn't destroy it," the reflection said. "You just set it free." Daniel's voice was a whisper. "What happens now?" The reflection tilted its head. "Now, Greybrooke remembers." The air shimmered. The grass turned to ash, and the sunlight faded into fog once more. Daniel's reflection smiled wider. "Welcome home." At first, Daniel thought it was morning. The light was warm, golden, almost too soft to be real. The field stretched endlessly before him, calm and still, and the small wooden house in the distance seemed to breathe like a living thing. But then the wind stopped. No sound. No movement. The air thickened again like fog pretending to be sunlight. And somewhere behind him, he heard the unmistakable sound of a bell tolling underwater. Toll. Daniel turned slowly. The world he had just escaped was rebuilding itself. The field crumbled away piece by piece, replaced by cobblestones. The horizon folded inward until the sky itself looked painted. And one by one, the buildings of Greybrooke emerged from the most perfect replicas of the old town. The bakery, the church, the square, all standing exactly where they once had, but too clean, too still. Every door opened at the same time. Daniel's breath hitched. People stepped out. They smiled. They waved. They looked alive. But their faces were his. Hundreds of them. Some young, some old, some burned, some pale as ghosts. All of them Daniel. "Morning, neighbor. Good to see you again. Late for work, Daniel?" Their voices blended together, cheerful, hollow echoes of human speech. Every word came with the same tone, the same rhythm. He spun in place, eyes wide. The whole town was full of him. Men pushing carts that squeaked like screams. Women hanging laundry that turned to ash. Children were laughing, but the laughter was his own. "No," Daniel whispered. "No, this isn't real." One of the townsmen, a mirror image with a perfect, painted smile, stopped and tilted his head. "Of course it's real," the other Daniel said. "You made it real." Daniel backed away. "You're not me." The other man's grin twitched. "Aren't I?" More voices joined in. "Aren't we? Aren't you?" Their eyes began to glow faintly all at once. And in unison, the hundreds of Daniels whispered, "We remember." The ground trembled. The buildings flickered like mirages. Shadows stretched from every corner of the street, crawling toward him. Daniel stumbled backward into the fountain at the center of town. He looked down into the water and saw not one reflection. He saw millions, each one staring back at him, whispering softly, "You gave us faces. You gave us names. Now we give you forever." Daniel clutched his head, screaming, "Stop. Please stop." The fountain cracked and the water turned to black glass. It rose, surrounding him, taking shape, arms, torsos, faces. All pulling, all whispering, all smiling the same perfect smile. He tried to run, but the cobblestones beneath him pulsed like veins under skin, and he felt the town breathing. Then from a distance the church bell rang again. Toll, toll, toll. And every Daniel, every reflection, every echo turned their heads toward the sound. At the far end of the street, the burned priest emerged from the fog. The ash still clung to his robes. He carried no Bible this time, only the lantern Daniel had shattered. It burned again. The black flame flickered with life, feeding on the fog. The priest raised it high and spoke in Daniel's voice. "Welcome to Greybrooke Reborn." The other Daniels bowed their heads. All except one, the real Daniel, who stood trembling, trapped in the center of his own nightmare. "You can't keep me here," he shouted. "This isn't my town." The priest smiled. "No, Daniel. It's our town now." He lifted the lantern higher. The flames swelled, spreading through the air like black fire, devouring everything it touched. Daniel screamed as the fire reached him. The faces closed in, whispering his name over and over again, until there was no air left to breathe. Daniel. 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 And then silence. The world froze. The fog vanished. And for a heartbeat there was nothing. Then slowly the town began to move again. The people smiled. The bells rang. Life continued. But there was no Daniel among them. Only reflections. All smiling. All whispering. We remember. The fog came first. Thick, slow-moving, and pale like the breath of something sleeping beneath the ground. It slithered across the broken road and pooled at the feet of the wooden sign that read, "Welcome to Greybrooke. Population 1. Then the number flickered. 1 became 2. A car appeared through the mist. Its headlights cut 2 white tunnels into the darkness before sputtering out entirely. The engine coughed twice, then went silent. From inside, a man leaned forward, squinting through the windshield. "Damn fog," he muttered. "GPS says there's no town here." He was tired, the kind of tired that makes the road look alive. His name was Michael Hart, a journalist chasing stories about vanishing places, ghost towns, folklore. He didn't know Greybrooke was more than a myth. Michael stepped out, closing the car door behind him. The air was cold, not naturally cold, but wrongly cold. Like the temperature dropped only around him. The wind carried faint music, a piano playing somewhere far away, though no lights burned in the distance. And then he saw it. A house. Just one. Windows glowing dimly as if waiting. Michael approached slowly, boots crunching over gravel. Every sound felt louder than it should. When he reached the porch, the front door creaked open by itself. "Hello?" he called. Silence. He took one cautious step inside. The floorboards groaned beneath him, but the air felt strangely warm now, like someone had just been there. A fire burned quietly in the hearth. A kettle whistled faintly in the kitchen. It was all too normal. Too staged. Then he saw the mirror by the staircase. A tall, cracked thing, its frame blackened by smoke. He caught his reflection and frowned. He looked fine. Except, his reflection was smiling. Michael blinked, stepping closer. What the hell? The reflection didn't move the same way he did anymore. It lifted its hand slightly too slow and placed its palm against the glass. Michael hesitated, then lifted his own. Cold. Icy cold. And just as his skin touched the glass, "Welcome home, Daniel." The voice came from inside the mirror. Michael's heart slammed in his chest. "Who's there?" The reflection tilted its head. Its smile widened. "You found us again." He stepped back, tripping over a rug. "No. My name's Michael." The reflection blinked slowly, its grin never fading. "Not anymore." Every mirror in the house, every shard, every window pane began to hum. The glass shimmered like water. And on every surface, Daniel's face appeared. Hundreds of him. All whispering, "We remember. Welcome back." It starts again. The house trembled. The fire turned black. Michael bolted for the door, but when he opened it, the fog outside was gone. Greybrooke stood waiting. Shops. Streets. People are smiling. All of them were watching him. And in every window a reflection moved a second too late. At the center of the square, the church bell tolled once. Toll. The faces turned toward him in perfect unison. "Welcome to Greybrooke, Michael. We've been expecting you." The sound of laughter spread through the air, gentle, childlike, endless. Michael stumbled backward, falling to his knees. His reflection in the puddle beneath him smiled. And in that smile was Daniel. "You can't leave," the reflection whispered. "You never do." The fog began to rise again, swallowing the town in white silence. Behind the veil, Greybrooke breathed. And somewhere in the distance, the window of the first house watched, waiting for the next traveler. The fog pressed against the windows like a living thing, smothering the world in white. Michael sat motionless on the wooden floor, heart pounding, sweat clinging to his skin despite the cold air. The reflection's voice still echoed in his skull, soft, familiar, wrong. You can't leave. He tried to steady his breathing. It's just a dream, he whispered. Just another stupid ghost story. But the fire in the hearth wasn't burning normally anymore. It flickered black like smoke caught in reverse, swallowing the light instead of giving it. Michael forced himself up, scanning the room. The walls were covered in old portraits of smiling families, mothers and children, men in suits. But when he leaned closer, the paint shimmered faintly like wet ink. He froze. The faces in the portraits were all his. Older, younger, laughing, crying. One of them even had blood dripping from its mouth, frozen mid-smile. This isn't real, he murmured. From the corner of the room came a faint creak. Thump. Then again. Thump. It came from beneath the floor. Michael crouched slowly, pressing his ear against the boards. Something moved under their slow, dragging movement, as if hands were brushing the underside of the wood. He swallowed hard. Hello. The sound stopped. Then, tap, 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 3 times right beneath him. Then a whisper, faint but unmistakable. Let us out. Michael stumbled back, knocking over a chair. Jesus Christ. The tapping grew louder. The floor pulsed. The boards began to buckle, one cracking open in the center. A smell seeped through wet soil, rot, and something else like burned flesh. He reached for his flashlight, flicking it on just as the board splintered. A hand, pale, skeletal, with fingernails like shards of glass, pushed through. Michael screamed, stumbling backward. The hand clawed for him, trembling violently, the skin splitting to reveal something darker beneath faces, shifting like wax under heat. Dozens of faces, all whispering. We remember. He forgot us. Don't look away. The rest of the boards snapped open and the floor began to breathe. A wave of black mist rolled out from the gaps, carrying hundreds of murmuring voices. Michael pointed the flashlight into the hole. Beneath the house was a vast space, not soil, not wood, a sea of faces pressed together, muttering, crying, grinning through the dark. Eyes blinked open in unison, staring up at him. Join us, Michael. We know your face now. He fell backward, the flashlight slipping from his hand and rolling toward the fire. As it did, the beam flashed across something etched into the wall, hundreds of names carved deep into the wood. He moved closer, squinting. Each name was followed by a date. Daniel Cross, 1954. Sarah Hill, 1967. David Lang, 1982. Margaret Finch, 1995. And dozens more. The last one glowed faintly beneath the soot. Michael Hart, 2025. Michael's breath caught. No. No, that's not. The floor beneath him gave way. He fell, crashing into the sea of faces below. Cold hands wrapped around his arms, his throat, his legs. The whispering rose to a chant, soft, rhythmic, endless. He returns. He remembers. He becomes. The last thing Michael saw before the darkness swallowed him was his own reflection, smiling from the floor above, standing calmly at the edge of the hole, watching. And then silence. The boards sealed themselves shut. The whispering stopped. The reflection turned and walked away from the hole, humming softly. As it passed the mirror by the stairs, its smile widened. Inside the glass, Daniel smiled back. Welcome home, Michael. The fire in the hearth flared once more, burning black as the fog outside thickened to hide the town again. It began just before dawn, though dawn never truly came to Greybrooke. The fog had thickened again, blanketing every roof, every road, every soul still breathing within the town's illusion. Then the bell tolled. Toll. Long. Slow. Heavy enough to shake the air. Every window in the town vibrated, and every mirror rippled like disturbed water. Toll. Inside the church tower, the old bronze bell swung by itself. Its rope was frayed, untouched by human hands. Yet something unseen pulled it methodically, rhythmically. And with every toll, the town seemed to wake. Shadows crawled out of the fog and took shape. Figures, familiar faces, smiling too wide, walked the empty streets again. In the square, reflections bloomed across puddles like flowers made of glass. And beneath the cobblestones, whispers rose from the dirt. The bell calls us. He's back again. We remember. Inside the small house on Hollow Street, Michael's reflection stirred. He stood before the mirror, tilting his head as the sound rolled through the air. "It's time," Daniel whispered from the other side. Michael's reflection nodded. "They're waking." The real Michael, buried somewhere beneath the house, opened his eyes in the dark. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The faces pressed against him on all sides, cold, wet, whispering. "The bell calls the lost. Follow the sound. Find the way back." He screamed, though no air came out. The sound was swallowed instantly by the soil. Above, the bell tolled again. Toll, toll, toll. The church's black windows burst outward, and a flood of mist and ash spilled into the square. The burned priest stepped through the haze, his robes trailing smoke. He held the lantern no longer black, but glowing faintly red as if filled with living blood. The priest's voice was a rasp of fire and ash. "Rise, Greybrooke. The forgotten return." The ground split open. Cracks raced through the streets, and from them crawled the faces of the buried, silent at first, then moaning softly as their eyes opened. Mouths without lungs began to sing. It was not a song of words but a low, mournful hum that filled every corner of the town. Michael's body moved on its own. Hands, dozens of them, lifted him from beneath the floorboards. He floated upward, through wood, through air, through memory. When he opened his eyes again, he stood in the square, surrounded by faces, some old, some young, some burned, some perfect. All watching. Daniel's reflection stepped forward from the church steps. His eyes glowed faintly white. "You came back," he said. "They always come back." Michael tried to speak, but his voice cracked. "What is this place? What are you?" The priest lifted his lantern. "This is where memories rot, and where faces live forever." "Why me?" Daniel smiled. "Because you looked." The crowd of reflections began whispering again softly, in unison. "He looked. He remembered. He belongs." The bell tolled one final time, a long, shuddering note that seemed to split the sky. Every mirror in Greybrooke cracked at once. The reflections inside didn't shatter. They stepped out. Hundreds of them. All Daniels. All perfect. All grinning. They surrounded Michael. Hands reached out, touching his face, his chest, his eyes. Their voices became a single word repeated over and over. "Stay. Stay. Stay." Michael screamed, but his voice vanished in the fog. The lantern's flame surged, flooding the square with red light. And when it faded, Michael was gone. Only a new reflection stood where he had been, smiling faintly in the glass of the church doors. The priest turned toward Daniel's reflection. "Another found." Daniel nodded. "Another kept." The bell fell silent. The town went still. And for a while, Greybrooke slept again. Until the next car's headlights cut through the fog. The sign at the edge of the road shimmered faintly. "Welcome to Greybrooke. Population 3. The fog hung heavier that night, curling around the edges of Greybrooke like smoke from a dying fire. No wind stirred. No birds called. Even the stars above seemed to avoid looking down. In the heart of the square, the priest's lantern burned brighter than ever. Its crimson light pulsed like a steady heartbeat, alive, watching. Inside the church, Daniel's reflection stood before the altar. He no longer trembled when the bell tolled. He was calm now, complete. Behind him, rows of pews were filled with faces. Each one smiling, glassy-eyed, unmoving reflections that had long since lost their originals. The burned priest walked up the aisle, his robes whispering across the floor. The lantern in his hand flickered, bleeding faint red light onto the cracked marble. He stopped beside Daniel's reflection and set the lantern on the altar. "It's time you knew," the priest rasped. Daniel tilted his head. "Knew what?" The old man smiled a broken smile, his lips split by scars. Where it all began. The lantern pulsed once, a deep red that washed the church walls in bloodlight. The stained glass windows trembled, and every crack in the floor began to glow faintly. Before Greybrooke was a town, the priest said, it was a valley. The people who lived here dug graves before they built homes. They buried their own before they had names to carve in stone. Daniel listened, his eyes locked on the light. The first to die here, the priest continued, was a girl. They said her spirit refused to leave and she wandered the valley, whispering to the faces of the dead. They burned her body to keep her from rising. He leaned closer to the lantern. But her soul stayed. The flame inside flared white-hot for an instant, revealing something within it, a silhouette. A child's face. Eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. Daniel stepped back. What is that? Her. The priest's voice cracked as he whispered it, reverent and fearful. The lantern isn't light, Daniel. It's a prison. The windows shuddered again. Every reflection in the glass of the church doors rippled violently. Every time someone dies in Greybrooke, the priest went on, their face is taken not by death but by her. She keeps them here. Trapped. Remembered. Forever. Daniel stared at the lantern, his pulse quickening. You're lying. The priest laughed softly. You of all people should know Greybrooke doesn't lie. The lantern flickered again, slower now, like a heartbeat fading. The girl's faint silhouette turned, looking directly at Daniel. He froze. He knew that face. It was the little girl from his dreams, the one who had stood in the field, whispering his name before the fire. She's the one who started it, the priest said. And you're the one who fed her. Daniel's throat tightened. Fed her? Every reflection you left behind, the priest hissed. Every memory you refused to face, she devoured them. You built Greybrooke piece by piece from your guilt, your fear, your grief. She just made it eternal. The lantern's light dimmed to a dull crimson. The girl's shadow smiled. Now, the priest whispered, she's waking. The flame went out. For the first time in centuries, Greybrooke was dark. Then the mirrors began to scream. Every glass surface in the church shattered at once, filling the air with a chorus of distorted voices, men, women, children, all crying out the same word. Daniel. He fell to his knees, clutching his head as the whispers grew louder. The priest stumbled backward, gripping the empty lantern. She's free, the priest gasped. You shouldn't have. He didn't finish. The shadows on the floor twisted upward, wrapping around him like smoke, dragging him toward the darkness behind the altar. His scream echoed once and then was gone. The lantern clattered to the ground. Daniel crawled toward it, shaking. The flame was gone, but the faint outline of the girl still glowed inside the glass. Her lips moved. No sound came. Then, softly, directly into his mind. You can't save them, Daniel. You never could. The church doors burst open. The fog outside poured in like a living sea, swirling around him. In the distance, the bell began to toll again, slower, deeper, older. Toll. Daniel clutched the lantern, trembling as the whisper filled the air around him. The town remembers. Toll. And so will you. The fog no longer drifted. It breathed. Each pulse of the mist matched Daniel's heartbeat, in and out as if the town itself had synchronized with him. He stumbled through the ruined church doors, clutching the lantern to his chest. The glass was cracked, the faint red glow flickering like a dying ember. Inside, the child's shadow still twisted faintly. You can't save them, Daniel. The voice whispered again, soft, melodic, heartbreakingly young. It didn't echo from the air. It spoke inside his skull. Daniel staggered down the church steps, eyes scanning the empty streets. The fog had thickened so much he could barely see the ground beneath his feet. But something was moving inside it. A child's silhouette, small, barefoot, standing perfectly still in the middle of the square. The lantern trembled in his hand. Who are you? He whispered. No answer. He took a slow step forward. The air grew colder. The fog parted slightly enough for him to see her. A little girl, maybe 8 years old, pale, hair tangled, dressed in the same scorched nightgown from his dreams. Her eyes glowed faintly white, and her mouth moved without sound. "You burned me," she mouthed. Daniel froze. "No, I don't even know you." The girl tilted her head, that eerie childlike gesture that never seemed human. "You left the fire." He shook his head violently. "That's not true. You left me in it." Her voice filled his mind again, this time louder, clearer, threaded with the sound of flames crackling and wood splintering. Images flashed behind his eyes: a burning house, a girl screaming his name, a boy's footsteps running away into the woods. His voice broke. "I tried to go back." The girl stepped closer. Her bare feet left ash where she walked. "You promised to save me. You said you'd come back. You never did." Daniel fell to his knees, clutching his head. The memories flooded him all at once, flashes of the night he buried deep in his mind. The lightning. The fire spread across the walls. The smoke. Her hand reaching through the flames. And his fear. He'd run. The girl's whisper turned to a hiss. "So I waited. And when no one came, I learned to make them stay." The fog erupted around her, spinning violently as hundreds of faces emerged from its surface, reflections of everyone who had ever died in Greybrooke. Their mouths moved in unison, whispering the same word again and again. "Stay. Stay. Stay." Daniel stared at the girl, trembling. "What do you want from me?" She stepped closer until she stood directly before him, eyes glowing brighter than ever. "I want you to remember." The lantern in his hands shattered. Red light exploded outward, flooding the square. The faces screamed as the glow poured through them like molten glass. And Daniel saw everything. Every death. Every reflection. Every soul that had come to Greybrooke, trapped by her, reshaped, remembered. She wasn't evil. She was lonely. "You forgot me," she whispered. "So I made a town full of faces that would never leave me again." Daniel's breath came in ragged gasps. "I'm sorry." The child blinked slowly. For the first time her voice faltered. "Are you?" He nodded, tears streaking his ash-covered face. "I didn't mean to run. I was just scared." The fog quieted. The whispers faded to a low hum. For a moment, everything was still. Then the girl's expression changed. She smiled, not cruelly, not sweetly, just sadly. "You remember now." The town around them began to tremble. Buildings cracked. The church bell swung violently, its sound warping with every toll. Toll, toll, toll. The ground split open beneath the square, revealing the sea of faces once more, but this time they weren't screaming. They were watching. "What happens now?" Daniel asked quietly. The girl reached out, touching his cheek with a hand that felt neither alive nor dead. Her touch was warm. "Now, Greybrooke decides." The ground gave way. The fog swallowed them both. The last thing Daniel saw before the world turned black was the child's glowing eyes and a faint smile that somehow looked like peace. Then silence. And somewhere, faintly, the bell rang one last time. Toll. Silence. For the first time since Greybrooke was born from fog and fire, the air was still. The bell had stopped. The whispers were gone. Even the fog had vanished. Daniel opened his eyes. He was lying in a field, the same field from his first dream. The grass was dry and brittle, the sky gray, the horizon infinite. The town was nowhere to be seen. No houses. No church. No smoke. Only the faint smell of ash. He sat up slowly, blinking into the dim light. The lantern lay shattered beside him, its pieces scattered like frozen blood. The child was gone. "It's over," he whispered. His voice felt strange, soft, hollow, distant. He stood, looking around, heart pounding in the silence. The wind finally moved again, brushing the grass with the gentlest sigh. Then he saw it. In the distance, a small figure. The girl. She stood at the edge of the field, watching him. Her hair fluttered faintly in the wind, and for a moment she looked almost human again. No fire, no glow, no hate. Just a child. Daniel walked toward her. Every step felt heavy, slow, like wading through the weight of memory. When he finally reached her, she smiled faintly. "You remembered." Daniel nodded. "I did." "Then you're free," she whispered. He stared into her eyes, no longer white, but the color of dawn. "Are you?" he asked. She hesitated, then shook her head. "I am Greybrooke now. I can't leave it. Not ever." The horizon behind her shimmered faintly, and from the light, the faint outline of the town began to reappear. But it wasn't dark anymore. The streets were whole. The houses are clean. The sky above it glowed a soft gold. The fog was gone. "You changed it," Daniel whispered. The girl smiled again. "We did." She turned to walk toward the town. For the first time, her footsteps left no ash. Daniel watched her go, the strange warmth of peace flooding through him for the first time in what felt like forever. Then she stopped. Without turning back, she said quietly, "Someone always stays." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" "For the faces to rest," she said softly, "one must remain to remember them." He froze. She turned her eyes full of the kind of sadness that only eternity knows. "You can leave now, Daniel. But if you go, Greybrooke forgets. Everyone does." The wind grew still again. The field stretched endlessly behind him, the open road waiting. And in front of him, the town glowed faintly, peaceful, quiet, alive. He looked between them. Freedom. Or memory. His heart ached. "If I stay, what happens to me?" The girl smiled gently. "You become what you always were." "What's that?" She looked up at him. The face that remained. The horizon pulsed once. The wind carried the faint sound of a bell, soft and distant, like a heartbeat. Daniel closed his eyes. When he opened them again, he stood at the edge of town. The church doors were open. The people's faces walked the streets again, laughing, smiling, alive. But their reflections in the windows no longer moved on delay. They were real now. Oh, humans. The girl stood beside him, holding the lantern repaired, glowing faintly gold. She turned to him. "Thank you." He nodded slowly. "Take care of them." She tilted her head almost teasingly. "You're the caretaker now." He smiled. "I know." She faded into the mist. And as the light of dawn broke over the rebuilt Greybrooke, Daniel saw his reflection in a window. It smiled back, not delayed, not haunted, not broken. Just him. And when the next traveler's car appeared in the distance, headlights slicing through the morning fog, the sign by the road shimmered once more. "Welcome to Greybrooke. Population 1."